Well, looks like everything's working. Hmm. All right. I think this is working. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Zack with Cardinal Gaming or CNA Games, depending on where you're watching this from, or whether or not you're local. We're in the middle of a online rebrand, so you know you're going to start to see a lot more CNA games and a lot less Cardinal Gaming. But Cardinal Gaming will remain as a local brand for Louisville. Cardinal Gaming is a manifestation of our local area because the Louisville Cardinals are here. No affiliation, of course, but I'm gonna try to get back into a good habit of recording. I used to do it a long time ago and kind of fell off after doing a bunch of other stuff, but we're gonna be getting back into more varied content creation for the sake of advertising and getting more exposure on the internet and maybe even locally too. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm just gonna go through and do my normal repair queue. I have a handful of really cool repairs to do today, and my goal is to show you guys while I'm doing them, and then we have a editing professional who is going to go back, chop up all this stuff, and hopefully make some streamlined content for us to use across our social media platforms. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, starting out, we have a Luigi Edition 3DS XL, and this system has an issue where the cartridge slot is not locking in place. So today, first thing we're going to do is path of least resistance is going to be just to replace the cartridge slot with a new cartridge slot. So that's what we're going to do. There are signs that this has been worked on before by a couple of missing screws and some screw covers. But it doesn't seem too bad so far, so we're just going to go ahead and hop in. I don't know who Nick Old School is. Hopefully that is a compliment, though. The battery out. Yeah, we got some more, at least one more missing screw right here. We should be able to make this system whole regardless. We got my microscope in the way of the stream chat. All right. So the easiest way to get a job like this taken care of, once we get the cover off, do we have all the screws out? We do have all the screws out. We're gonna get the cover off. Yep, somebody's been in here before. We got a miss. This is not socketed correctly. So from here, we're just gonna tear everything off the board, and I say tear in a very as a very bad use of language, because we're not tearing anything. We're going to be very delicate with customer hardware. But for a repair like this, we're not going to be able to do any of the work while the board is still in the system. So we're going to at least have to separate the main board from the rest of the system. Fortunately, that's not too much of an endeavor. 3DS systems, well, this is kind of gonna show my age in regards to how long I've been doing this kind of stuff, but 3DS was where I really got started in the repair world. And if you guys know anything about the 3DS, especially when it comes to any type of top assembly repairs, you know how absolutely miserable 3DS repairs are in any capacity. So it's kind of a baptism by fire where I picked a really bad starting point, but I'm not upset about it. I would consider myself pretty comfortable with getting into these systems, and then also it makes it easier that we have a really well put together back stock of spare parts and stuff like that by collecting broken systems over the years. So I have just about every replacement part that I could need for these systems, and a reasonable amount of experience getting into every little nook and cranny of these devices. So I got that going for me at least. I won't say that I like working on these. I don't think that anybody could realistically say that they like to, but I bear it probably a little better than, you know, a lot of the other repair community who very expressively, for lack of better terms, everyone else hates them. That's what I'm trying to say. Nobody's out there saying how much they enjoy working on 3DS systems, and it's almost entirely because of the manner in which the top assembly connects to the main board, which is through these little ribbon cables that are wound through a metal cylinder, and it is a very large pain in the butt to unwind and rewind that, because it's three ribbon cables plus an antenna cable, and you got to get all of that through this little, you know, couple, probably like 10 millimeters, if even that, wide of a cylinder, and you got to do that without breaking these ultra fragile ribbon cables. For me, it was a good way to learn an amount of finesse, because a reasonable amount of finesse is needed to do that without breaking anything, whether it's breaking the plastic or breaking the ribbon cables themselves, which is the most common thing that happens here. So now that we've got the system down to bare board, I'm gonna try to get this zoom a little better. There we go, or the focus. Now that we got this down to bare board, we're going to, and what I could probably get away with is just either flowing leaded solder into the lead-free anchors. That will make it a little easier to flow the solder when we heat it up, because lead-free has a higher melting point than leaded solder. So we're gonna do that first, at least to, I can't remember the name of it. I don't use it, so I don't really remember it, but there's a low melt solder that you can use that even it reduces the melting temperature of solder to a substantially lower temperature. I haven't, probably not to my benefit, but I haven't tried that stuff out yet. And there probably is some practical application to it, but it's just not something that Oh yeah, my thermal camera just saw my soldering iron and went crazy. So we're just flowing some leaded solder onto the anchor posts. We could probably do that with, it doesn't really matter if we, here we'll probably need some flux. Don't really need flux on the anchors, but on the pin line it's going to help. And we're just trying to get a little bit of leaded solder flowed into all these joints. We don't really need to worry about bridging right now because we're going to remove this socket or this cartridge slot anyways. Like right now we have a bridge on the last pin, but it doesn't really matter. We could and then now I'm gonna try to remove as much solder as I can with this solder wick. That's just gonna even further help the removal process. May not be necessary. Actually, it's probably not necessary, but Mr. Z himself. I haven't been called Mr. Z in a long time, probably since the last time I was streaming in some capacity. It's my little snippers. There we go. There's more solder on here than we could probably reasonably pull off with this wick, so I think I'm just going to forego the trying to remove all this. Yeah, even now there's still a decent amount left. So yeah, we're just going to hit this with hot air and see if we can get it to come off that way. Now this is going to be a little bit of a process. We're trying to spread out this heat in a way that doesn't melt any of the plastic connectors. Now, actually one thing I'm going to try first, instead of where this way, if I put heat on this board like this, I can just have the weight of the cartridge slot cause it to separate once the solder has managed to liquefy. And we're using 380 degrees Celsius, 60% airflow on a Atten hot air workstation, but really those numbers are mostly arbitrary, just based on whatever you're comfortable with. If you're trying to do this stuff yourself, which, don't do this stuff yourself, send it to us. CNAgames.com. Repair, you know, we'll get you there. Or locally at either of our 2 stores. Yeah, at least on this side there's no plastic connectors or anything. The best way to do this though would be to use a preheater, but there's not really a good way for me to make content with a preheater. Well, at least recording it or getting it on camera. All of my stuff is relatively fixed position, so maybe I could get like a little handheld preheater, something like that, and that might do the job. But yeah, we still got, and these thinner PCBs are very susceptible to popcorning, if you're familiar with that term, where too much heat in a condensed manner will cause layers of the board to separate in a kind of a popcorn manner. So you have to be very careful when using hot air. Yeah, we're not going to get anywhere doing this, so we're going to have to flip it around. Fortunately, with angled nozzles, we're able to focus our air. And I could use some capped on tape, but really in the worst case scenario, I can just replace any connector anyway, so I'm not really worried about melting anything, but also as long as you keep airflow going and you keep the air moving, you'll probably not have any issues. Okay, we've got and I'll be honest, I haven't done one of these in a long time, but the process is pretty straightforward either way. Now 2 hot air rework stations and 3 hands would make this mindless. Yep, it's not gonna happen the way that I want. So we're just gonna have to. I'm trying to do things the fast way, and it makes it end up being the long way because I'm not doing things the slow right way. I guess that turtle hair fallacy, or I'm sure there's some fallacy that accounts for that. So we're just gonna have to wick off all this excess solder, get it to where there's barely anything holding this on, and then we can use heat to pull it off. Probably use my solder sucker too. Actually, I'll let that heat up and we can try that out. Yeah, I can see the anchor, so we got pretty much all of the solder off of there. There's a lot of little components around here, so I'm trying not to pull anything up. Wouldn't be the end of the world if we did, because we can just replace them, but you know, if we can avoid it, it's better. Ow. Getting there. So the least fun part of doing this is the removal. Oh, I guess I gotta refocus. There we go. Alright, Alright, we're gonna try using a solder sucker on the anchors. Well, there's the solution, the solder sucker. We don't need to do all that. All right, now at least we have top portion separated on one side. All right, we have it separated on this side. Now we can use hot air and get this separated. And use the weight of the board. Should only be connected on the bottom now. And there we go. Oh, darn it. All right. Got the cartridge slot removed. That's actually the hardest part of this. The rest of this should be pretty straightforward. But we're going to move to the microscope. I actually just changed around my microscope, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of refocusing. Oh no. Gonna have to get the, oh, there it goes. Oh, nope, it's still there. Trying to get the little mouse. Yep, gotta put a new battery in this. It's still in there, right? Oh no, it's not. That's not good. My mouse dongle is not plugged in anymore. And I want that mouse to not exist on the microscope screen. Well, we can figure it out. It's gonna be a little bit of effort, but I'm just gonna take my mouse and all right, now we can move that mouse out of the way. We'll just pretend that never happened. All right. Got my mouse back. And got the microscope. Is it working? Need to line up the microscope on both sides to where I can see good and you guys can see good. All right, my focus is correct. And your focus is now correct. All right. So We could probably zoom out a little bit too. Let's. All right, that still looks pretty good, so we'll just go with here. It's going to be the same, more. I'm just going to go ahead and tin all over, or not tin, but I'm going to remove all the solder from the anchors and the pin line. Give us a good base to put our new port on. After a while, that solder starts to stick around. All right, that one looks good already. We got a little bit to get rid of here. Not really anything to get rid of over there. All right. So now we've got all of our old solder pulled up and a nice flat surface for us to drop our replacement cartridge slot on. These look like pulls. The replacement cartridge slot that I'm using looks like it was pulled from another unit. You can kind of tell by, see how there's solder on those pins and on the anchors. That means that this was pulled from uh-oh, this is the wrong model. I was kind of scared of that. Yep, this is not the correct version. Well, sometimes you learn the hard way. But fortunately, we have the means of getting a correct one, and I can be a little more, be the best way to call it. I don't have to worry about preserving the board. I actually have one right here. I don't have to worry about preserving the board, so I can just blast it with heat until it separates. So we're just going to do that real quick. Get this out of the way. We'll go back here. Yeah, so we got another. We're going to verify the locking mechanism works, and it does. So this will be a good candidate to pull from. Now, because I don't care about this board, I'm going to crank up my heat, and I'm just going to use, I'm not going to use a nozzle, and I'm just going to run this until a little bit of popcorning, won't be a big deal. But even with us spreading out the heat like this, we may not even have an issue like that. No. This, I imagine, is going to be a much faster process than I can already hear the popcorning starting. Probably doesn't help that there's chips on the other side. Well, I had plans, and this board said no. So we're just gonna do it the same way we did it. Trying to be lazy again, and here we are, doing more work. I don't even know which model 3DS those are for. When in doubt, remove solder from the anchors. Alright, now we should be able to blast this with heat, and it'll pop off. Yeah, I've already, this is already in my donor board pile, so some amount of things have been pulled off this board already, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what they are. Hopefully this wasn't made a donor board because of the cartridge slot, but I wouldn't do that under normal circumstances. This thing is being very stubborn, but we got there. Alright. We got our... We don't need this right now. We can let that cool down. Move back to the microscope. Alright, looks good on both sides, so now if this works the way that we want it to, this should just be a direct drop in. Yep, look at that. That reflective metal is going to make this hard to do altogether, but I'm going to start by flowing some solder on this anchor. The pin line looks like it is good and straight. I'm gonna Alright, so that should hold it in place. We got 2 pins here. Well, this one actually needs to be pushed down a little bit more. It's probably very hot still. That lead free is not working with me. There we go. All right. Get those 2 pins connected. Some more anchor work. Just want to make sure that it gets Push down onto the board all the way, and we're looking good there. We got one more anchor to do. Looks flush with the board already, so. And there we go. Now we just have the pin line, and then we're going to do cleanup. Move this up some more. There we go. Not really a good way for me to, I guess, maybe I can adjust the lighting. There we go. Some amount. Trying to fine tune it, get it to look good. Doesn't look so great on my side, but anchor pads are going to be hard to get solder to flow through on, but all the other ones should be fine. Man, I wish pin spacing was like this on newer systems. Would make stuff a lot easier to work with. Replacing the USB-C port on a switch is nowhere near the same. Kind of chunky connections, but they're good. So now we're just going to move to cleanup, get all this residual flux off the board, and we're going to partial reassemble for testing. And if we get a game to pop up, we'll know this is good to reassemble and send on its way. Now this cleanup portion is mostly just for me. The flux that I use is no clean flux, so we don't necessarily have to do it. And, you know, unless somebody else gets into this for any other reason, we'll probably never see it, but I like to make my work look nice. Some more. We're just using isopropyl, 99% isopropyl, and I think this was advertised to me as a horsehair brush. Whether or not it's actual horsehair, I'm not really concerned with. It does the job, and that's all that matters. Gotta watch out for that little connector there. Those things are very finicky. Alright, that's good enough. So we've got our new cartridge slot put on. Now, I'll do a little wipe down. Don't need this to be perfect, but get the water off. Alright, now the best way to get these 3 ribbon cables connected is to open the 3DS like I just did here. Let's rewind some of this, get it out of the way. I wish there was a good way to rewind I forget the name of that stuff all the time, the solder braid. So we're gonna drop the board back, well, actually, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Again, it's been a little while since I've had to work on these, so I'm having to kick out the cobwebs in my brain. I'm using the tweezers to hold the ribbon in place. When the LCD is open, it gives you more ribbon to work with. So, no, I gotta. My good tweezers are not convenient, so I'm making it work with these. Alright, we got that connector done. That's the only hard one. Just gotta make sure that you put everything back without hurting anything. Get all the other cables out of the way. We're going to drop this back in place. Oh, gotta get you where you guys can see a little better. Sorry about that. Alright, now we've got the board laid back down. Get these other two ribbon cables. First we flip up that flap, flip the flap. Alright, that one's in place. And then this one's the easy one. I'm gonna say this is the easy one and this is the one giving me trouble. There we go. Alright. Got a couple more ribbon cables to put back in. Flip that guy up. Now he's connected. Got the lower LCD and digitizer flex. And this one is honestly, at least in terms of the queue that I have right now, this one is probably the least exciting of the repairs, but it's the oldest one that I have, so we got to get it taken care of either way. Now we don't need to put together anything that is gonna need to be taken back off after testing. So right now we're just gonna we have this together enough. We have a testable setup. Should be able to power on. And then only thing I have to do is accept the fear that when I turn this on, it pops back off. Alright, we're good. Wait for screens to pop up. Nope, I lost connection. Well, it should be popping up by now. So that is not good. Don't think it's because we don't have any of this other stuff plugged in, but we will satisfy that just to be safe. These sliders, and actually I don't think any of that's going to matter. Don't see how the Wi-Fi would make a difference, but we will plug it back up and see. Other than that, the only thing I can really do is validate connections. No. Well, that's satisfying at least. Again, when things don't go the way that you want, it's easy to get scared. Well, we have the cartridge slot is physically working, but we don't have anything popping up on the screen. Let's find another game. Even though I'm pretty sure my tester is good. You know where any 3DS games are?
Probably check the shelf behind me.
Yeah. Okay, yep, I got a DS game and Alright. Got some additional games to at least roll out. It'd be a lot easier if I would just put the bottom assembly back together all the way so I can... Alright, DS does not appear to be working. Well, this is why we don't put it together all the way, so that we don't do double work. Right. The only thing we can really do offhand is go over our connections. So we're going to do that first, at least make sure that there's no bridging or no pins that are not properly connected. Go over the areas that we worked on and make sure we didn't knock anything off. Make sure everything looks good. Our pins all look securely soldered on. I don't see any bridging. But for us to be at least no worse than when we started with 3DSs, that's good. I'm breaking out my multimeter. I'm going to start checking for bridges. It could just be that the cartridge slot that we put on is not a good cartridge slot. That is always an option, or always a possibility. No bridges. started looking at the other cartridge slot to see why it wasn't locking in place, but we're past that, so we're not going to worry about it. I'm guessing the two side pins detect whether a cartridge is plugged in or not, so I'm gonna look at those. Yeah, they look good. All the pins look securely soldered into place. Yep, and no bridging, so it doesn't look like any components got knocked off. So we could just be unlucky and have a bad cartridge slot. That is, unfortunately, a possibility. We're going to try to look down the hole and see. Yeah. So we got one pin, but I think that is normal. Well, look at this one. Okay, it's not normal. Well, look at that. This is what we get. And look at this one. And we can't see it well. Yep, different slot, but so completely my fault and maybe fixable, but we got one pin that's bent down just a little bit. You know, a little bit of due diligence would have gone a long way here. But we should be able to bend it back up and it'll stay in place. We'll test a couple different games. Alright, that's bent back up. It looks about straight enough, so we're gonna try this again, see what happens. See a lot of bent pins in cartridge slots pretty often, and you can usually bend it back into place and that'll solve the issue for good. Get a nice connection on the battery. We'll pick Crosswords Plus as our game of choice. And the reason why this is happening because we have we don't have the joystick connected, but we're no better off than we were before. So this might just come down to, unfortunately, another cartridge slot replacement. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. But we want to test it thoroughly. So multiple ejections, both styles of games. Yeah, it's not detecting this 3DS game. Well, we are getting we are better off than we were before, but this game looks a little dirty, but I'm not going to say that it's so dirty that it would cause it to not work. And it's flashing like it is detecting a game being inserted. Yeah, so that little flash is it detecting a game being inserted. And it at least seems to be, I think this is a fake DS cartridge, so we're not gonna, still probably fake. Well, actually maybe not. That does look like a real back. So right now we are at 3DS games don't work, but DS games do work. I am not confident enough to say that they are reading different pins or what, so we're just going to try a couple more 3DS games and make sure that it's not a game-specific issue. Got to find some 3DS games, but that shouldn't be too bad. Cheap 3DS games. Could have sworn we had 3DS games. Well, I don't see any other conveniently, so I'm going to run to the floor real quick and grab couple of our cheap 3DS games and see if that solves the problem.
All I got to was the top of the ruins, like the mountain ruins.
Surprisingly enough, I only found 2 3DS games in our cheap game pile, and of the 2, one of them was another crosswords. So, hopefully this tells us everything we need to know. If it's a cartridge slot issue, then none of these games are going to read. If it was a game issue, then both of these will read without an issue, assuming that they're clean, which they both look clean. Alright. Oh no. Can it stay on long enough to at least test? Alright, so it is not detecting 3DS games, but it is detecting DS games. That is enough for me to be able to say that we're actually having a cartridge slot specific issue, and not the not just a dirty game or anything like that. Because if, again, we tried DS, pops in just fine. 3DS is where we have the issue, so it's probably that bad pin. We're going to need to do some more hunting. I'll look at that bad pin again, see if it got misaligned or anything. It's still not all the way up. Let's try something. This flap is, we can bend it up, but that doesn't really help. Are you guys able to see in there? Yeah, one pin, looks like 2, 4, 6 in from the left. That pin is the pin in question. I mean, that looks pretty good though. The only thing missing would be the other side. All right, try one more time. If this doesn't work, it's unfortunately time to pull off another cartridge slot and try again. I'm gonna put Skylanders in there and leave it in there. Turn this on and see what happens. You know what? I'm tired of being lazy. I'm just gonna pop on the back cover so we can. And we're an hour in on this repair now. Partially because I tried to go the fast way and it ended up being the slow way, but alright. At the very least now we don't have to worry about the battery falling out, so we can focus. Yeah, we understand. Joystick isn't here. Alright. Again, testing DS. DS is populating. 3DS. 3DS, same issue. Not reading 3DS games. So, only reasonable assumption here is, unfortunately, that the cartridge slot is not good. So that means we gotta, unfortunately, pull it off and do it again. That's just how it is sometimes, unfortunately. But we are at least in a better spot than we were before, where some games are working in some capacity, which tells me that at least the board aspect of this. I don't know how a locking mechanism failing could cause any issues with games reading one way or the other, but at least that doesn't seem to be the case with this system. Now, whether or not that's going to be true with just DS games or 3DS games, we'll kind of figure out. And then we can also use this as an opportunity to look underside and make sure there's no missing components or anything. Open this up. Fortunately, I forgot to turn off my solder sucker, so we'll always be able to get in here and pull this off pretty easily. Alright, now we've got the excess solder pulled off. I'm doing my 380. Should make it pretty. I'm going to do this the hard way. Okay, that side is disconnected. This side is, hopefully it's staying. Yep, that side's disconnected. Now we should be able to focus heat down here. Could have sworn that the cartridge slots I bought are for the, well, they're probably for the new 3DS. That is the most profitable system to fix, so maybe I was assuming I'd end up working on the most of those, but alright, there we go. Alright. Got the cartridge slot pull. At least it was a little quicker this time by not trying to do things the fast way. I'm gonna look under here. The only slightly concerning thing is these chips are underfill down here, and underfill chips mean the potential for ball squeeze, and I'm not seeing that here. So that should not be an issue, but at the very least, our chip placement did not work the way that our cartridge slot replacement did not work with the cartridge slot that we used. So the only thing we can do now is I'm going to run to the back real quick, and I'm going to find a replacement cartridge slot. Repairs can be this much of a pain in the butt on 3DSs without getting into the top assembly. Just imagine what it's like when you get into the top assembly. Alright. Oh, wait a minute. Are these it? No, these are not it. I've got cartridge slots in here. But they look like cartridge slots for like the one that I already pulled, so. Alright, this one looks good though. I like how this one looks. I'm gonna come over to my spare parts section back here. You guys can't see me, but I'm looking through piles of repair parts. Yeah, looks like the cartridge slots that I purchased were indeed for a different system in the 3DS family, so that's not going to work. Maybe I'll order some of these, but at the very least, I have a cartridge slot that looks much better. Now you can't see it from the top side. Maybe I can. Yeah, but you can see it right here. all these pins are in good shape. They're all even, properly aligned. So this one should be a good, this should be a good donor candidate. The same thing, we're gonna, well, we probably don't need to worry about flowing leaded solder onto this, because we're just gonna suck it all up with the desoldering gun. Sometimes I get a little, sometimes I look at this thing and think that I don't use it enough, but here we are, using it. Probably hasn't heated up all the way yet. Oh, there we go. And then, goodbye. That's pretty satisfying. And probably just use this as a soldering iron and alright, that got it started. Won't worry about those. These anchors that soak up all the heat and make it hard to remove these with hot air. But getting rid of the most of this will help a lot. Alright, so we got the anchors cleared out. We'll go back to overhead. Now we're gonna, from the, without using any clamp or anything, we're just gonna gotta do this with my offhand. Got it. Got that separated. How's this side look? This side needs to be separated. My hands don't work the way that I need them to. Alright, got that side separated. Now the rest of this should just happen with gravity. Didn't get it entirely. Got a little piece left, but should be able to pop that off. That wasn't so bad. My broken tweezers. Alright. So this comes down and makes contact with this, so I guess that's how it tells it that the cartridge slot is set down. Now we can look again. Pins still look good. Alright. This is the donor board. I need to do the same thing again. Get rid of the excess solder on these pads. I guess if I really wanted to stop that, I could just unplug it, but... The next repair is going to be a lot more fun. It's a bunch of trace repair on a Series S. I'm actually looking forward to that. One thing I don't mind doing is trace repair. Makes me feel like I'm a surgeon. This one already looks pretty good, but... Alright. We've got the foundation for our cartridge slot again. Round 2. That Nintendo chip makes a good way to validate focus. Again, the same thing. It looks like it sets pretty well as is, so we don't really need to do much along those lines. So we're gonna just tack it down. One of the anchors. That looks good. Alright, this thing's being very insistent on telling me that there's a lot of heat, so we just unplug it. No more noise. No, we don't need these connected. There we go. Let the solder do the work. Alright, we got all the anchors down. Again. Probably use some flux here. I'll just get the solder down and we'll come back with the flux after and reflow these. The pin spacing on these is really enough that you don't have to be so specific or so fine detail This isn't like an HDMI port or a USB port or something like that. All right. And for the sake of not doing a bunch of work and it's still not working, we are going to do another partial reassembly and test again. We have our second replacement. Cartridge slot put on. Need to move my camera down some so I tend to do work a little closer to me on my mat. Well, Mason, this will be fun to chop up. Well, beyond me at least segmenting this repair out. But that's what our editing professional is for. All right. Of course, it would knock itself out a little bit. I can't get that lucky. There we go. I don't know how much actually has to be plugged up to do a proper testing, so I'll just plug up as much as I reasonably think we should. While I don't want to have to, well, I want to assume beyond a very reasonable doubt that we have fixed this issue for good by doing yet another cartridge slot replacement, which again was just my fault. I should have looked inside the cartridge slot before I replaced it. The only downside to using parts from donor boards is they ended up a donor board for a reason. And I don't necessarily think that one ended up a donor board just because of a cartridge slot, because I would have replaced that cartridge slot all the same, but some of these boards even predate the business, and we've been around for a little while, so who knows really. I could have had these in my garage before me and Mason even got together. And that was like 10 years ago now. Alright, got just about everything except the Wi-Fi. Alright, I'm going to slap on the back cover just to have something to hold the something to hold the battery in place. And we are going to test again. New cartridge slot in place. We want to see it work. We want to see it work. You better work. Please work. I don't like the idea of bargaining with my repairs, but well, that's not good. That's not good at all, actually. I'm gonna leave the game in there and see what it does. Should boot. Doing the same thing where it's not. Nope. Yep. The only problem in this situation is that without being able to, I'd have to check it to be safe. I don't think there's a reasonable way to test if games are working when the game will not lock in place. Maybe there's like a specific point you can hold it at. Let's see what DS games are doing, if it's still doing the same thing. Alright, it is detecting a game being inserted. And then it's erroring out. So this is specifically a cartridge slot issue then, because we were worse off than we were with the previous cartridge slot. So that might actually be a good thing. Of course, we repair my broken spirit. I gotta fix my broken spirit first before I look at anybody else's. I am you could consider this a manifestation of repair hell. We'll look at the pin line again. Pin line do be looking good. We're gonna flow these pins. It's the only reasonable thing I can do offhand. Just make sure that there's tin my iron. Clean it up before we put it back to use. Shouldn't have to flow any more solder on here, but be able to clean this up and get rid of any potential bridging. Again, with the spacing of these pads, it's be really hard to actually bridge these. We can also look back into the back portion and see nothing's touching, at least from this side. So we should be good. Same thing with this. They do not appear to be bridged, and they shouldn't have continuity when a game is not in there. So let's test that, make sure that's not the case. Alright, so they don't have continuity. Man, what a way to start getting back into the streaming. You get a pain in the butt repair like this. Alright, let's go back to this time. I'm gonna socket these so they don't cause me any trouble. I'm actually less upset that this is happening now that I know that it's consistent across both DS and 3DS games, because that is not what was happening with the other cartridge slot. So that tells me that we either have an installation issue or we have a cartridge slot issue. You can't see the cartridge slot issue. It looks fine from my side, so that makes it a little more annoying, but I'm going to try to at least get back to where we were with the other one, where we were able to get DS games to show up. I guess launching is another thing. We haven't even gotten that far yet. Alright, so we are one step ahead again. We now have DS reading. But we do not have 3DS reading. That's not good. Well, at this point, this is reasonably telling me that any kind of, I could put more effort into this, but the path of least resistance is going for me to be to just put a swap a main board from a known working unit, maybe something that has like a top screen issue or something like that. I'm gonna have to run that by the, well, even really if data was a concern, we have the system working enough to where we could transfer data. As long as the data transfer option works. I am not going to put any more time into this one, because any more effort trying to get the cartridge slot working is now going to be very open-ended and rabbit hole-y, and I avoid those kind of repairs. So the sucks that the first repair that I do, that I expected to be a straightforward process, is not straightforward, but that's how it goes sometimes, especially with the 3DSs. Yeah, I'm happier to get this far and it be a bottom assembly issue than to put a new screen assembly in and end up with a torn ribbon cable or some other thing along those lines. Yeah, very strange. Across 3 different games and it's doing the same thing. It's not that it doesn't like crossword puzzles, it also doesn't like Skylanders. So for now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sideline this, contact a customer, let them know their options, and then take care of this probably tomorrow. Let's do one thing real quick. On the off chance that all the joystick stuff. No, I'm reaching now. At least I understand that I am, and I guess that's important. But this is not going to do anything. Mm, 3DSs are weird in the sense that they will not allow the system to turn on when the top assembly is not, or this top screen isn't detected. So, and there's other oddities I've noticed like that, where it's like can't turn the system on if something isn't connected one way or the other. Where is my long screws? And that's good enough. We have, I'm just gonna put on everything that reasonably needs to be put on. Not that, I know this stuff doesn't matter. I'm actually certain that it doesn't matter, but I've invested so much. I'm willing to try dumb things that I know don't work. Why 3DS games specifically would not work without these plugged in is, like I said, I am reaching very far right now. But it's 5 minutes. Oh, you know what? I guess this is actually good because I never started recording. I'm glad that I just realized that. I've been streaming the whole time, but not recording. So at least I won't have to filter through all this stuff. I guess that's worth something. All right, come on, crossword puzzle. Now you're gonna work. Yep, still nothing. And it's detecting a cartridge being inserted. Now the two options here are either I could try to figure out why it is only reading DS games and not 3DS games, or I could just do a mainboard swap. And for me, the mainboard swap is the, assuming the customer does not need, which even if the customer did need anything data-wise, we can do a system transfer. So we have that much going for us. But yeah, it is, right now is not the time for me to try to, see now it's still detecting that the right now is not the time for me to try to figure out why it is only reading DS games and not 3DS games. Maybe I can learn that in the future, but I'm not worried about it right now. So we're going to, I'm just going to take all this, throw it in a bin for now, and I will return to it for a mainboard swap off stream. That is much less exciting. So I'm not gonna bother streaming it. But what we can stream is the next repair. The next repair is actually something exciting. I'm looking forward to getting into it. It is a Xbox Series S that has a very much destroyed HDMI. Well, the port itself isn't destroyed. It is the connecting pads on the main board that is destroyed. So we're gonna fix that. I'm gonna move over here for the time being. Dump all this in here. This is all the customer stuff. We got two cool repairs actually. We have one is a, I'm gonna set this to the side for now. Oh boy, we got lots of, actually, our B2BQ has a lot of 3DSs in it, so I'm about to be, the correct word, inundated with 3DS repairs. So that's going to be fun. Now, but we're going to shift gears into something that is both something that I'm more confident in a reasonable path for, and should be more entertaining as well. And that is going to be this well, before we actually get into that, I'm gonna click the record button. Start recording. All right. So today we have a Xbox Series X or Series S, excuse me, that has HDMI port damage that extended beyond the HDMI port. So usually Nate handles these kind of repairs, and then whenever he sees anything that needs trace repair or anything like that, gets handed off to me. This is one of those cases. The port had, before he had initiated the replacement process, the port had already separated from the board in some capacity, and when that happened, it pulled these traces up. As you can see right here, there are missing pads 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 missing pads. This is unfortunately something that we see ever so often with these systems, where a HDMI port failure will be so substantial that it will pull up the traces along with it. And when that happens, you know, only thing you can really realistically do is reestablish those connections. We run trace wire to the pads and reestablish connection that way, and that is what we are going to show the process of today. So before we get into it, one thing I want to do is we're going to kind of peel back these trace wires, because we're going to do a little bit of prep work. And see which ones are still here. So this trace wire is still pretty close. This one is pulled. This one is still connected, fortunately. These three, the wires are still very close to the to where the pad was. The pad is no longer there. So what we're going to do to start is we're going to put down some flux, and we are going to flow leaded solder into the anchors and on the pin line for the pads that still exist. Pretty much just all ground pads, which tends to be the case. Ground pads are harder to pull off of the board than pins that are actually part of a circuit, because they absorb much more heat, and well, I guess the heat doesn't matter. It's more just like they are thicker traces to take that impact a little better. And these boards are very thick, so they just absorb a lot of heat in general, which makes it a lot harder to flow solder into these anchor holes. But we managed to do it anyways. We're just flowing some leaded solder onto all the pads that still exist. So the most of these that are missing are signal lines, and in between each pair of signal lines is a ground. So that's why you see like 2 and then ground, 2 and then ground, 2 and then ground. So that is what we're going to be reestablishing are the signal lines for HDMI port. And now that we have the traces pulled back and solder flowed into the pads that still exist along with the anchors, we're going to replace the port, Series S HDMI port. Now I don't really have a good overhead camera setup that, yeah, maybe we can, you know what, I just need to get a little creative. I have to move some stuff around. It's not the end of the world. I need to do this anyway, so. Whoop. Of course I'm gonna do this and then it's not gonna be where I want it anyways. Let's start right here. Can I zoom? Oh yeah, I'm gonna zoom out. I'm sorry for the crotch shot. There we go. The way that I like to do HDMI port replacement is with hanging the board. There we go. That looks good. We hang the board off of the table like this. So where our port's going to go is right here. Put down some kind of reinforcement, hold it in place like that. And then on these boards, they get max heat, max airflow. Before we do that, I want to pull off this little adhesive pad. So we have a replacement port. And there goes my tweezers. Hey, my good tweezers are right here actually, so I can be lazy. Got my good tweezers. I'm just going to let this run until I see the solder flow on these anchors, and then I'll know I can drop it in place. And it has flowed into place. And drop this down in. And, press down on the board, or press down on the port, make sure it securely connects with the board. Now one thing that I like to do here when I'm specifically on Xboxes, because of how much heat they soak up, makes it really hard to make a good connection with the anchors to the board. We're going to put down some flux on the anchors and try to facilitate a good connection where we can see the solder on the anchors pull up the legs. Like we'll actually see the solder flow up the legs. It's kind of hard to show on camera, but I'll be able to see it. And then when we put it under microscope, you'll be able to see it there as well. All right, now we're looking good. Hold that in place, let it cool down. I might show this in the future, just under the microscope. It's probably going to be a better way to do it than trying to do it with the camera. But I needed to move my camera anyway, so it's of no consequence to me. Sneeze. If I apologize if that got to you guys. I could have muted. That's what I should have done. The proper action was a mute there. I apologize. Got that back in place. The anchors look well secured. So we're going to move to the fun part, which is all going to be under microscope. I see why I was having trouble moving this now. There we go. Now I can move all that around freely. All right. So now to trace repair. All right, you have to get a lot closer. All right, that looks like about as good as it's probably gonna get. So I'm gonna, for the sake of content, we're gonna remove me for the time being. Now, for me, I like to start from right to left because I'm left-handed. It gets me, I'm doing everything coming in this way. So we're gonna first start with this connection right here. Now before we get into establishing these connections, we're gonna need to tin all these pads, get a good amount of solder on each of the pins, not the pads, so that our wire has something to connect to. It's a little too much, but it serves its job, or its purpose. Again, too much. That's about as much as we need. That's a ground. That's too much. That's better. Better. I need better tips for my micro pencil. That's definitely part of the problem, is no good tips. Use my big iron to get all the excess off of here. Now we've got our pins tinned. We're gonna figure out which one of these is my thinner wire. Got our wire ready, and now we get into the scraping. So we're gonna have to scrape the coating off of, well, that's the first one. This is the one we need to work on first. We need to expose the trace. This, if you can see, follow this trace, it goes to a via right there. So we could expose that via, but it's exposing the trace is much closer to the to the pin that we're connecting from. So we're going to do that.
What time do you want to go lunch?
I don't think Gage has his walkie. I threw him on that buy as soon as he got here. So these three.
Can you all ask when Gage wants to go on lunch? Jake's already been on lunch. Charity's on lunch now. Gage, not Jake. So he's gonna go at 5. Okay, thank you.
So with these, we're gonna have to cut this one because it's not long enough to reach to the pin. So cut this off, and then we're gonna expose from back here. So that's going to be our connecting point. And this one is close enough to where we can reconnect it. That one is also close enough where we can reconnect it. This one is missing, so we're going to have to expose it back here. This one is long enough, so we will be able to use it. And that one's going to connect right here. Other one, too short, so, well, yep, well now it's just gone. So we will have to, again, scrape back, expose the trace. This one should be long enough. Yep, it is. And this one is still connected. So these two are going to be reconnect. Actually, I think this 3, I should be able to reestablish that one as well. So 3 or 4 of these we won't have to run trace wires for. Let's go ahead and clean up. Now we got a good sight of our work area. And we can start up here at pin 16, 19, 18, 17, 15. So how we're going to start is we've already got the pad tinned. We're going to tin the trace wire, or the trace on the board. Now we have the means to connect our trace wire. Get our trace wire. Give it the old tug, see that it's good. Now we're going to use tweezers, kind of form this into the direction. Nope. It almost worked. At least we got the form. There we go. Got a good solid connection on the pin.
Can I have the order for menu comfort, please?
Gotta. Yep, this can definitely tell my micro pencil is no longer working effectively. Do we have, that's about good enough. So we're gonna Yep, we got a good connection. Break off the excess, and our first pin has been connected. So now we just got to do the same thing like 6, 7 more times. Something like that. Again, good tight connection on that pin. Try to get a good line up on there we go, that's a little better to work with. Again, we get our connection established, we can separate. We get there eventually. And we just keep doing this however many more times necessary. So this is the first half, is the actual creation of the new traces. After we create the new traces, we're going to need to secure them in place. And we'll get there. We'll get there soon. All right. Gotta there we go. Another good connection established. Now we gotta line it up again. Flow some more. Oh, this pin just is not taking solder, but we got enough to make our connection. So we have 3 done now. Our next one is going to be a long run. We're going from here to here. No, I'm jumping ahead. It's this one. Let's go ahead and tin this first. Good connection made. We use our tweezers to make the run. We don't need to worry so much about it being the same, I guess, length. Just that it sets up to do the next portion reasonably easy. There we go. We didn't tin that section though, so we need to do that. And we need to put down more flux. All the other one had flux from where the port was done, so we're just gonna, there we go. Enough flux to get the job going. It's actually good that that happened because now this wire is properly tinned. Get some tweezers to hold it in place, and then we will be good. All right, that should be fine. Do need to, I think we might have bridged that connection up here. If that's the case, we'll have to clean that up. Nope, we didn't. That's good. Okay, so this one is going over here, but I think we can just do this with a good amount of solder. Would be a lot easier if I had a soldering iron that worked the way that I needed it to, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. What we're trying to do is well, now I've just made things worse. I usually like to do side connection, but that does the job. See if we can get a big enough slaughter blob to do this the lazy way. Nope, we can't. That's not good. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to do it the hard way. And now I gotta get rid of that bridge. Can leave that little solder ball there, it's not gonna bother anything. But we do gotta get rid of this. There we go. Got rid of it. But we're gonna have to scrape back this out of the way, you. And go ahead and break it so I don't have to worry about it. Alright, so we broke it. And now we're just gonna scrape back this connection. And all that burnt flux be too hard to try to clean right now, so we're just gonna work around it. Okay, we got, this is ground, so we're gonna go right here. That's a good connection. We got our tweezers. Before we do that, let's actually use this. Use this to tin that pad, and then do it on the and there we go. That's a good connection. Slowly but surely we're getting there. So we have the next connection is going to be need to right next to the one we just did. Before we do that though, let's go ahead and tin the this one we can just do straight down, which makes it a little easier. Oh darn. I thought I would just leave it there, and instead I just messed it up. But we're at least going to be able to make this one. Alright, that straight line is done. Another trace ran. We only have like 5 more, you know. We're going to get there eventually. Let's park it right here. There we go. Now we got to fix the mistake we made.
The reward comes after.
Okay. This is another one where I wanted to keep the connection using what was on the board, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So we're just going to do the same thing. Another. Might actually get it to work. It looks like a good connection opportunity here. Hmm. Actually, I think we did it. That one should be pretty good. The way we can test. Yeah, that with the wiggle, it's still moving. So that one's good. That's at least a little less work for us to do. And we're more than halfway done, so we're gonna get into some cleanup. Yep, alright, just making sure I'm connecting to the right. A little less dirty now. Well, if we were going to be using those traces, we're not anymore, which is not a big deal. But we're at least cleaned up now. And we have 1, 2, 3 traces left to run. A little bit of prep work that we got to do. Alright, so we got our traces exposed. I'm going to do a little more cleanup. Let's get the board dust out of the way. We see our connecting points. I'm going to borrow some of that. Alright, we've got our, let's get this out of here. We've got our lines tinned, and now we can run some more traces. Next trace is going to go right here. Cooperate, darn it. Okay, got a good connection made. Now,
Everyone back up!
alright, we got that one made. It's 2 left. 2 left. I'm not a big fan of these long runs, but when the damage is this bad, you don't have a lot of options. Alright, we've got the wire tinned. What I'm trying to do now is just get that connection. That one looks good. Now we're down to our last remaining. Oh, nope, not as good as it needs to be. Borrow some. Now it will be good. We're gonna have it cleaner than this, but this at least gets the Alright. Should just be able to break this off, and then we have one trace left. Alright. Alright, and that's the last trace. Now all we gotta do is separate it, and then got a little bit of cleanup. Let's get rid of that burnt flux and gotta do this in a way that makes sure we don't damage any of these cables while they're still not really connected to much, or connected by much. So they can still move around, and like right there, you can see there's still a little bit of wiggle. We're gonna fix that with UV coating, but we gotta get the cleanup done first. Let's fix down here. Our little solder bank. We're making a withdrawal. I'm going to do a little bit of light brushing. All right, now we're pretty, I mean, it's not perfect, but we're clean enough. I can trying to get this perfect as without risking damage to the traces that we've made or the jumpers that we ran. It's kind of not worth the risk. And this is about as much as I want to do. All right, yeah, I'd say it looks pretty good. So we're going to dry this off. We're going to move into the next phase of this repair. Before we do that, we're just going to test our work, make sure that we don't have any bridges. So we're going to start with right here, no bridges. If my multimeter makes a loud beep, then I'll know I've messed something up. But usually bridges are pretty easy to fix. Now we want to test from the pin to our jumper point. Good. 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 Get that lined up a little better, but we're good. We're good. All right, so all of our jumpers appear to have been ran correctly. We are now just going to need to make sure we get a good dry surface to work with. Well, as dry as we can reasonably get it, of course. It's not going to, the amount of leftover flux, and then see, we don't want to damage our work before we even get it down. Use maybe one more Q-tip just to tap dry everything. Alright, that's about as far as we're going to get to go. Now it is UV coating time. I'm going to put a little bit on this. Alright, I made a little pile of UV coating for me to work with. Let me get my cap on, so this stuff loves to keep pushing itself out after I start it. Alright, I'm going to put this where it's easy for me to pull from. I'm going to be just off camera. This is a little microfiber rag that has our, alright, you know, I can put it right up here. So I'm going to use my tweezers, pull off a little bit, and just start running up the trace, or the jumper wire. And we're going to do this all the way from one point to the other. I want to get enough down to where the pins can't really wiggle. And spread it out. We don't want it to be too thick, because if it gets too thick then it doesn't harden very well. So we want it to just be enough to do the job, enough to hold everything in place. The amount that I pushed out is way more than I realistically need. See, I want to avoid these pools. Those pools are trouble. We can spread it out and lessen the severity. That should be fine. Don't really have much left. Make sure that we get it all spread in between each of these legs. That way when it cures, it will make everything nice and solid. Alright, this is about as good as I need it to be. We got it in between each of the legs. It looks like it's pretty well distributed. This is where repair becomes a lot more of an art and a lot less mechanical. The application of conformal coating, or UV coating, whatever you want to call it. We get our little UV pen and we get to work curing. This is the kind of more boring part, because we're just going to be hitting this thing with a laser for the next about an hour, or well, probably a minute or so. I don't know why I defaulted to hour. But what this does is this cures the UV coating and it hardens it, and then we have a finished job. Pretty confident that we're not going to have any issues out of this, regardless of how many jumpers we had to run. But we won't know that for sure until we go to test it. And this is about in terms of fixing significant damage, like this is about the worst that it tends to get. Definitely worse with USB-C ports on the Nintendo Switch, because half of the pin line, well, it's twice the amount of pins that you can see on here, which is 19. I think it's twice, maybe a little less, but you know, a lot more pins, and there are 2 rows of them. One row is hidden, so you kind of just have to hope that your connection gets reestablished, and when that hidden pin line gets separated from the board, you're making new new traces to connect to, and you're just hoping that the connection gets established when you put the new port on. And that's a pain in the butt. Fortunately, we don't see a lot of those, and really when it gets so bad where it's like, you know, the majority of the pins on the inside pin line, we just turn it down because it becomes not cost effective to do that much work. The customer for this repair is already paying more than our standard HDMI port repair for this, and once you get too far into it, it just really gets to the point where, like, especially with these newer systems where, you know, all your data is in the cloud anyways, it just becomes more cost effective to replace the unit than it does to try to get it fixed. So there's exceptions to that rule, but yeah, we're looking pretty good here. Looking like we got some good curing happening. I'm gonna get on the inside. All right. So that's the worst of it. It's all over now. We ran. Let's see, how many was it? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. More than half of the jumper wires that needed to be replaced on this, or that half of the jumper wires that we ran is not half. Of the 19 pads on the board, 10 of them, more than half of them needed to have jumpers ran. So that's what you see here. 10 out of 19 pins reestablished with jumper wires and UV coating to keep it all in place. So this is probably I wouldn't say top 10 that I've seen for bad HDMI port damage from, you know, probably dropped while the port was still plugged in and it pushed it all out of place, and, you know, severe drops. This is what happens when you have severe drops. PS5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, it's all the same stuff. So, you know, we've seen these across every console you can think of with an HDMI port, and the process to replacing it's always the same. So now we're at 5 o'clock. Got one repair, one out of 2. Let's see. I do at least want to see this working. So we're gonna plug it up at least enough to. Oh man, this is a nice novelty actually. This is the old HDMI port. So you can see here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. One of the pads we were able to reestablish without running a jumper, but you can see where all the other 9 ended up. This is the port. The port itself is probably not that bad a shape. You could even argue that the port would still probably work. We're not going to use it. Oh no, my tweezers are snaggletooth now. But these are the underside of the pads that would typically be on the board, and when this got pulled off, those got pulled up with it. That's unfortunate, but that's just what we see sometimes with these, and you either learn how to run jumpers or you don't take on these kind of repairs, and we're pretty comfortable with jumper running now, so at least there's that. Let's see. Nate, if you could, when you get done with that repair, will you reassemble this for testing? If I do start this repair, this is actually going to be another really fun one. It's 5 o'clock. There's going to be a lot of work involved with this one. let's do it anyways, why not? This is a B2B repair. First system that, or first controller that we've seen here, at least. The, I don't know what the actual name is, but we're just going to call it the PS5 Pro controller because that's what it feels like. It feels like a Pro controller. Looks like a Pro controller. It's got the little extra triggers and fancy thumbsticks, and I got the gonna have to take off the sticker first so we don't see customer name. Not really important because, well, maybe more important actually, because this is B2B, so it's the customer information of the business that I am doing this repair for. So with this controller, we have I'm gonna try to straighten out my camera first. All right, that looks good. With this controller, we have upon initial testing, it was, well, actually this is new to me. I'm gonna plug it up to my computer because if I remember correctly, it was not connecting. So let's validate that. Well, before I'll switch you guys over and make sure I don't have any relevant business information pulled up. Gamepad tester. All right, we got our gamepad tester. This is the meat and potatoes. Oh no. Gotta find a USB cable because the one that I'm using right now is being used by the microphone, so can't unplug that one. All right, I got another USB. I need to get a USB splitter. I have ran out of USB ports on my. All right, let's see what we got in here. We got this is that one. Where's this one going to? This is, what is this going to? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I know enough that I can at least unplug that Well, that's I appreciate that. Still dreaming. I thought that I unplugged my my label maker, and instead I unplugged the mic. That's unfortunate. Well, so from where before I plugged this in, so I plugged it up, and I was able to verify this controller not connecting to my computer, but a standard PS5 controller was connecting. So, and for full disclosure, I've been into this controller before, and I already have a good idea as to why this issue is happening. So, I'm not going in entirely blind, but for the sake of content creation, we're gonna pretend that that is the case, and we're just now getting into this for the first time. So, we got the back cover off. We got the front little, I guess, cover. Both the removable joysticks, which is really cool. I love that. I love that there's removable joysticks in this, and I'd honestly be interested to get into these and see what the joystick mechanism, or what kind of joystick is used, if it's the same as standard PS5, which is even still, being able to remove and install new joysticks makes the process of repair substantially easier. So it is a win in any capacity. If you like PS5 controller, for how many drift PS5 controllers we see, this is albeit more expensive, but this is definitely a good way to have a controller and it stay good for a long time. I don't really use controllers in any capacity, so, and honestly I kind of like the Xbox controller setup more than PS5, or 4. Really, I guess kind of, PS5 controllers are more, they got closer to Xbox controllers in terms of their shape, but from PS4, but still, I prefer Xbox controller, the Xbox controller setup. Xbox One, man, this thing is just not cutting it. Xbox One controllers are pretty nice. They feel comfortable in my hand. I don't like using manual screwdrivers, but when screwing into plastic, my little screwdriver just doesn't cut it. So depending on how much I want to do with this one today, we might either get all the way into it, or might just get far enough into it for me to be able to work on it reasonably easy tomorrow. That's going to be the two outcomes of this. We have a little spring here that keeps this little slider in place. I think it'd actually be easier to remove the slider. There we go. Gotta try to keep it together. Don't want to lose that spring. Alright, there we go. Spring's still intact. We got 2 screws right here. I haven't looked to see if anybody's been into these controllers before. It's funny, when the Series 2 Elite controller came out, I got one for drift, of course, probably after only having been out for a couple of weeks, and I was not aware of the threaded thumbstick that they use in that controller, and I was trying to figure out how to separate it, and I couldn't, because every other Xbox controller and the first generation Elite controller use the same joystick assembly. Alright, now we've got all the screws pulled off. We can remove the back cover. This just opens up to more screws, so we're not done. Actually, a lot more screws, especially compared to the original PS5 controller. So Now I got to remember which ones need to be taken. If I remember correctly, it's all of these. So we're going to, at the very least, we're going to make this easy on ourselves. Pull out the battery. What I want to do more than anything is show you guys what I initially found to be the problem with this controller, because it was an interesting find. And the solution is also not it would not typically be worth it for a standard controller, but for how much these controllers cost, repair becomes a more reasonable proposition, because I don't remember what we're charging on this, but it's more than the value of a standard controller, I can say that much. But this controller is worth more than a standard controller, so that's where it's, you're making that judgment call, but there's not a... with repair, especially with Sony, if it's out of warranty, which I don't know if these are still warrantyable or not, but if it's out of warranty, you're gonna send it off to them. It'll be multiple weeks of waiting, if they even do offer repair for it, and then you'll get it back, and it's probably just a different controller and they replaced it, which is definitely a good way to solve these problems. Or you have third-party repair where, at the very least, we're going to actually try to fix the problem. Now, there actually will be a pretty good way for me to show what I believe to be the issue, and then I'll be able to show how I got to considering this to be the issue. We're going to take off this board now that we have we had to disconnect that one, but it did it itself. So we've got this separated. Now we're down to our main board. All we have to do is take off this connector, this one, and then we should be able to just lift this out. There might be some clips holding it in place. All right. Now we're down to our main board. This is where all the action's happening. So on the main board, we have this big, beautiful chip right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move to, let's see if I have it pulled up. All right, it's not connected. Why is it not connected? Oh yeah, I unplugged it. Let's plug that back in. I have my microscope, or my, I have my thermal camera mounted under my microscope. And while it is conveniently accessible, without having to have it on its old original stand, whenever I'm working with heat under the microscope, it'll start beeping out on me. I don't know if you could hear that, but that's the beep that it makes. That beep was just from it turning on though, so. All right, let's see if this works. All right, there's my thermal camera. Now what I'm gonna try to do here, a USB cable that I used. Oh, wait a minute, I actually have one plugged up for power. We're gonna plug this up, and I'm gonna, hopefully it'll do the same thing. We'll come out a little bit more so it, all right. Oh, you see that little heat spot right there? trying to. Like to get this where I don't. Well, actually, you know what? We can just lower it. Getting that shadow to line up with. All right. Unplug it. Plug it back in. And you see that heat spot generate on, that is the south bridge. Now, let's take a standard PS5 controller board. I just so happen to have one right here. It has the same, well, I already took that's where the south bridge would normally be, and I took it off already. But we got another one right here. Blinks orange 3 times. Oh, let's see if this is the same issue then. So the south bridge is right here. And you can see when this one's plugged in, plugged up to power, you have a little bit of activity, and I would consider that in the realm of normal. But for, maybe I'll try another. I got a handful of them, so it's of no consequence to try it 3 times. Well, actually I don't. But my findings, which are consistent with the other one, the one that I have the south bridge pulled off of already, is that there's a heat spot generating under the south bridge whenever power is plugged into it, and that is not normal. So we're gonna have to figure out why that is happening. So this is I had to actually wait for, I did 2 things. I got replacement chips from China. We're not going to take the easy way out today. We are going to take the hard way out. So we have 64GG. So these are technically the same Southbridge chips. I'm assuming that the process of replacing would be the exact same. Of course we won't know, but I also, and what we're going to do today, because it's going to be better for content creation, is I bought a stencil. This is a direct heat stencil that will let us reball, which we're not going to reball this one. I pulled the one that I tested that had, it was just a controller with drift. The one that I tested that had drift, I pulled the south bridge off of that one, and I went ahead and prepped it for oh, wait a minute. Is this the same? That's a 42GG. I got a little scared for a second. I remember where it is now. It's not in that holder. It's in my other holder. Now, where is my other holder? Other holder. Other holder. All right, over here. We have the appropriate chip in our holder. I'll flip this around, and then and there we go. We got this is a direct heat stencil, so we should be able to reball it this way. Now the only problem with this is that we need to figure out a way to make this not move at all. And I also need to figure out a way to have you guys be able to enjoy what I'm doing at the same time. So there we go. All right. We've got our stencil. Let's rotate this around, make it fancy. There we go. We got our stencil. And there's two ways we can go about doing this. There's either, which first, I'm just going to go ahead and try to do this now so I don't have to worry about it later. We need to, first, what I like to do is tin these pads, give a good setup for the new solder to connect to, because what we're going to be doing is one of two options with reballing is either using pre-made balls of the suggested size or using solder paste to fill the stencil with balls of the appropriate size. I think I am close to, if not entirely, out of pre-made balls in 0.5, which is what's needed for this. So we are going to do things the hard way. And we're going to first tin all these pads with leaded solder. I want to get it to where every single pad has a little solder bulb on it. Flux is going to burn before we get there, so we need to clean up and do it again. No, at least we got most of them already. We have a couple more. Actually, I don't know if those are ground pads or what, but yeah, we lost pads. So, oh wait a minute, maybe not. Let's throw down some more flux and try to get it going again. I was about to say, typically these are a lot more resilient than that, to where that wouldn't be the issue. But we will. Yeah, they're still there. They just got dirty. Good. I was about to say, I didn't want to have to use pre-made, but you know, we're not rebuilding pads on a chip that I paid 20 or 30 bucks for. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, because when we use the paste method, some amount of or any variation in the size of these is going to be filled in with additional paste regardless. So there's no need to be perfect, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. We're really gonna get this extra wet. Rachel, what's good? She's a hundo. Mm-hmm. I mean, for Liz, not for me. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Mom should have talked to you about that. But I'm actually busy at the moment, so if you want to either message me or follow up on the chat, either way. Okay, toodaloo. It's not perfect, but I would consider that good enough. Some of them could be filled in a little more, but like I said, the paste is going to finish the job that we started. Would have been nice to get all those holes filled, but we get what we get and we don't throw a fit. All right. I want to get this as reasonably dry as we can.
Hi, this is Nick with Card Logging, calling for billing pricing. I was just calling to let you know your appearance for your music that after the testing, it detected dust buildup that I believe is causing overheating issues. After the practice
Oh, yep, that would make sense. I was like, man, there's some balls missing, but we just had incorrect placement. All right. That looks good. We're gonna use some Kapton tape and tape this down to the holder. Tape it down all four directions. We'd probably be good just doing this much, but I don't trust direct heat. I don't think it's going to work the way that I want it to. And we're going to see, but I'm not holding my breath. Did a lot of reballing with the PS4 Slim failed South Bridge in a specific model. Specific model PS4 Slim was unfortunately prone to South Bridge failures, and same kind of chip. So similar process. All right. So now we got this down. Looks like it's in place pretty well. What we're gonna do is break out some solder paste. This, if I remember correctly, this is leaded solder paste. 183, yeah, 183 if I remember correctly. You probably can't see it, but this is solder paste for, or using leaded solder. The goal here is to pull some of it out. Get a nice little chunk of it. That's going to be the paste we're going to use. Put it in a little paper towel. Dab it, remove the moisture. I learned this while I was taking micro soldering classes at iPad Rehab. I'd already tried this before, and I think like my only difference was that I wasn't removing the excess moisture, because it definitely helps. But now we have our glob of solder paste. I'm going to take a portion of it, put it on here, and just push it into the holes. And the goal with this is to just fill them up. Fill in the holes. I think there's a good Valentine's Day joke to make there, but that's probably not appropriate. Yeah, moving on. Here we are, scraping solder paste into these holes. We're going to do it until we can run the knife across the whole section and remain consistent. Like I said, any differences in the size of and the amount of solder in these holes will be made up by either the size of the pad after we pre-tinned it, or the amount of solder Now, our success will come when we heat up this and the balls turn into little solder balls, or the little holes turn into good little working solder balls. Now I'm going to try to do this on the lowest heat I can. This is a 185, so we're going to do 250 just because there is an amount of heat loss. Let's do 270. And we're gonna small nozzle for focused heat. We can kind of watch what happens. Have it back up. Now for some added security, I'm also going to hold this down at a couple of points where there's no solder. So right there and right here, got it held down, and we're going to start at the corner. And it's doing exactly what I thought it would do and not working the way that I want it to. So what's happening here? Is separation from the board, or from the chip. I don't think it's bad enough that we need to do anything about it yet. Actually, it probably is. Yep. So this is Direct heat not working. It should not this should not happen. So when I buy this saying, oh, it's a direct heat stencil, and then here we are, not getting direct heat out of it, or not being able to use direct heat. Yeah, that's what happens. Fortunately, a little bit of run on the soldering iron, give us a good foundation. This is where I kind of wish that I had solder balls, pre-made solder balls, because those are actually a lot easier to work with when it comes to this size. I got some 0.6s and I got some 0.4s, but I do not have any more 0.5, and I don't know why I didn't order enough 0.5. I have 0.4s, but they're just too small. And even if I had 0.55s, they're like, these little insignificant differences are a whole lot with this kind of stuff. So that pre-made chip is starting to look a lot better now. Try to do it the fun way, but it doesn't look like fun's gonna cooperate. So we can move back down here. Now, if I assume correctly, which I really hope this is the case, the only difference, oh man, that's a good reball right there. I'm assuming that this was a reball, because I don't think that people are buying these chips new. The difference in these codes should be irrelevant, and just the fact that they're the same. CXD 9064GG should hopefully be enough. We will find that out when we go to take off the old IC. So we've got the... Ooh, that's a loaded question, Bob. A loaded question gets no answer. You know what? I'll entertain it. I'll entertain it. I have no position in cryptocurrency, so I don't maybe I don't. Well, I can't say that word. Maybe that's the old timer in me. But I am not concerned with. I mean, when in all reality, you know, I don't want to get into it. Let's just say that I don't want to get into it. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna not get into it. This nozzle could be a little bigger. No! That's not what I wanted to see. Man, I thought I did a good job on those traces too. Ah! Bob, stop asking questions. Let's just leave it at that. You're asking me questions, and I'm not the type of person to. I don't think about that stuff, to be honest with you. That's the best way for me to put it. I'm not. I don't. I only. I do business, and I buy stuff that I like, and I use that as savings, I guess you could say. I like gold and silver. Is that the best thing to do? Probably not. Is there money to be made elsewhere? Probably. Am I worried about it? Not really. I think, oh, there we go. I was thinking for a second we'd have to crank up the heat, but that was not the case. Just needed a bigger nozzle. That was relatively low impact. Unsubscribed, man. I'm sorry I was not able to satisfy your questions. Goal here now is going to be to clear all this solder off the board. I'm going to do that with ooh, it's 547. Well, it's not knowledge until I actually manifest successful repairs. It's also my fault to an extent too, because I try not to take on the straightforward stuff so that I could put my focus into pain in the butt stuff like this, which may or may not be working in my favor. Probably not. This kind of stuff tends to not be profitable, but it's my assumption that you have to do these kind of repairs as a part of getting in the other kinds, and partially establishing reputation and saying that you can do these things.
Have you also seen the screws that's supposed to go with this system?
I didn't take it apart, did I?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I have no idea then. Oh, that one was a while ago though.
Yeah, it probably just got sorted out then. I can just pull them.
Yeah. That's about good enough. I'm gonna clean this up and put down some, flow a little bit of leaded solder onto these pads, give something for the new chip to stick to, and then I'm gonna try it out and see what happens. Flowing some leaded solder into all these pads, and then we can put on the new chip and pray that because they are the same model that they will indeed do the same thing. All right, that's good enough. I'm gonna leave that, well, I'm gonna clean up most of that residual flux, and then we're gonna apply the new chip. All right, that looks good. That's about as good as we need it to be. Before we put it on, this is orientation. We would also be able to tell by the little arrow right here. That little arrow telling us that this corner is where that little circle should go. And get this lined up properly. That looks lined up well. So just like with removal, we're gonna give it some good heat, and then once it's heated up enough, we should see it snap into place. With this, it's better to do more than less because you don't want to try to nudge it. before it's actually all right. That's the kind of nudging that indicates a connection. And those look like balls connected on the board. This board's hot, but looks like even, uniform connections across all sides. Let's like cool down for a second. And we're gonna hope that the same thing doesn't happen. When we plug it in, well, I guess too, we should probably, and I wonder if this works. I'm gonna try this out. And so two things you need to get a controller to connect to a system or a controller or a computer or anything like that is the battery and a USB connection. Well, my initial assumption is that if it was to work, it would be at least flashing at this point. So I am thinking that either our connection is not established properly or on the IC, or the chip is indeed the wrong chip. To an extent, I was kind of half expecting this not to work. Yeah. I'm getting no activity. Now, the only other things that I can think of, which I always do this much, just to make sure that the IC is properly connected to the board. We're gonna throw down a little more flux and flow it one more time. Should be enough. It looks well connected. Oh, well. It looks well connected, and I was able to get a wiggle test on it, which is what you're supposed to look for with these. So, and one other thing we can do while we're already here, we can at least verify the pattern between the old one and, not the old one, but yeah, the pull and a standard one, because at least where the model numbers are the same of the chip, if there is any kind of variation with that additional numbers below it, maybe the ball pattern will also be different. I am not seeing that so far though. Yeah, it's kind of seems like for sure, yep, exact same ball structure or grid layout. Let's yeah. Even before we were getting, if I remember correctly, yeah, we were getting flashing lights whenever this is plugged in, so I'm fairly confident at this point we have the chip secured correctly. So it is more than likely going to be the case that there is a quantifiable difference between the two south bridges, where initially I figured, 64 GG would work across any 64 GG, and that tends to how it that is how it is with PS4 south bridges, where if as long as it's the same model number, it will work correctly. Doesn't appear to be the case here. Which now I'm with the additional functionality of the Pro controller, I guess you could assume that like unless there's a chip on the board otherwise that is storing the additional input information or how the controller works, that it's either going to be the south bridge or it's going to be I guess I can't think of what other chips it would be, so maybe that is actually the case, and there is no, without getting access to this specific chip, there would not be a way to fix the issue of a failed south bridge. I don't really think that's the case though. I'm still not entirely sure that I want to accept that as the case here. I'm fairly confident in my work with at least getting this chip properly attached to the board. And you can see, at least from what we're able to see on the outside, those balls look properly attached, and especially after doing it a second time, a reasonable assumption that it is connected appropriately. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Where before we were getting a little heat signature on the south bridge that was not normal in a PS5 controller. We were getting no heat signature with a new IC, and of course there's a lot of variables here. Could be, and wouldn't be surprising entirely if it was a bad batch of of ICs, especially given the manner in which these are sourced, because these chips are proprietary to Sony. If Sony is not making them, they're having a factory make them for them in a very closed manner. So the only way these are getting out is if people are pulling them, or if people are copying them. And I don't think that it's the latter. So these could be pulls and reballs. They could be, and I guess the off chance that a reel falls off the back of a truck in some capacity. There is that possibility. That would, be the best case scenario, unfortunately, with how access to parts is still restricted. That would actually be the best case scenario, is if these were stolen or otherwise. But well, at least from what I can see, I don't think there's any reason to continue trying to work on this one. The only realistic solution that I had was to replace the IC and see that heat signature go away, and it does not appear to have been the case. Well, the issue has not gotten any better with a new South Bridge. Now the heat signature is not there, but how many more chips do I try to use? With these controllers, zero access to parts. So I'm going to partially reassemble this. My area's gotten pretty good and dirty from this morning. Put this together just enough to test it again.
The top end is $45. You're gonna sell the pack for 20 each.
No, at the very least, you can see what the process is like for reassembling this. As many screws as there are, especially as many more screws as there are between this and the original PS5 controller, it's actually not that bad getting in and out of.
The weird guy walked up. So, how you feed those things? NPC guy walks up. So do you bottle or?
We have one more joystick, I guess trigger assembly. Yeah, I really don't mind getting in and out of this. It is really not much worse than standard controller repairs. Now at this point, I don't think there are any actual missing connections that need to be established in order to test this controller out. We'll test it one more time, just now that everything is screwed back in. But I've consigned myself.
Like after all that. Well, I don't know what it's doing. I haven't watched things probably since all that stuff happened.
this is at least enough to hold everything in place. Pop this battery in, and either way, either this is not working, and we're reassembling it, or it is working and we're reassembling it. Either way, same outcome. Yep.
Game start. Do that fucking job.
That's all she wrote. Uh-oh.
Why is there a boxing match for turning out? That happened. Oh, this happened 9 months ago. Yeah. I almost uploaded in 9 months.
Yeah, no, there's enough battery charge in here that if it was working, it would turn on at this point. So, yep, that's it. That's all she wrote. The idea of going back through this multiple times and replacing another south bridge in hopes that it solves the problem, and maybe we could look at reballing the original south bridge, but that's the only other option that I can think of. But we're gonna call it there. There's nothing else that I want to try to do with that. So at the very least today, you got to see kind of the worst end of the kind of repairs that we have to do here, where you get more into the rabbit hole and the less probable, I guess you could say, repairs where you can try to do something and hope that it solves the problem, but that's the reality. Not everything is fixable, and between limited access to parts and limited information available purposefully, both of those are purposefully done. We're able to fix what we can with the information that repair companies share with each other, and you find out on your own. But other than that, it's the easy stuff, and then this, and maybe next time there'll be a little less hard stuff and some more easy stuff to make some good content out of. But if you guys do decide that you ever need anything fixed, you can check out our website, cnagames.com. We have a repair page there you can go to and start the process of either mailing in a repair. We offer B2B, and then we also have 2 stores locally where you can drop off a repair off at. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to help you out in any capacity, and probably try to do this again next week with some more likely to have a good path stuff. So check us out next Wednesday, and maybe you'll see some new things. So that's all I got for you guys today, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.